Strangely enough, I want to present one more thing to prepare, I think, future presentations. This is an experiment right here with using a chat GPT session with a somewhat customized GPT, which I've prepared with knowledge of a past manuscript from the year 2016, 8 years prior to today. And you want to test the GPT customed because maybe the upload didn't quite succeed, or the system prompt accompanying the ancillary material is not quite so clear. So somebody wrote a manuscript entitled Third Testament, which is, I suppose, a pious but blasphemous notion. And I wanted to see if the chatbot can actually summarize this in a way that's not necessarily insightful. As you see, oh, it's one, two, three. It's overly loquacious. It doesn't really get to the point. But maybe if it's asked to write a summary, rather than say one thing that's useful to me of the possible 10,000, then maybe that would be a better system prompt. And so you can try to reload into your memory some of the details from a long manuscript that you've written in the past that you'd like to rework or add to, and so on. And the sad thing is that the things that were most important to you at one time are unfortunately the things that are completely dead to you now, even though they should be under your nose and inform your destiny. But again, it's this kind of Faustian pact we make with the devil of corporate employment, owing to an excessive fear to engage in any entrepreneurial activity, so that once again we can secure our shekels for leisure in a capitalistic environment that probably in the next few months will be annihilated anyway by nuclear war. So we just waste our lives and whatever. But let's be optimistic, of course. S&P 500 will just keep on increasing because always up, never down, right? But there's one interesting thing that you can do. I know everybody's making videos on this and on DALLE, image generation and so on, but at one point I believed that mnemonics were actually essential towards the retention of text that you wrote with themes important to you. And maybe that's true. So maybe you need mnemonic devices, converting thoughts into images with repeated memes and so on. But of course, if we were to go back to two-column writing and a kind of programming and proof, as we nonetheless allow natural language itself to flow across the page, at least the left side, then we'd see nonetheless that the best mnemonic is just simply a clear understanding of what you're saying. And that's it. It's hard to remember things that are inspired, require a trance, metaphorically speaking. But biochemically, if you're in at a moment of eureka, then obviously your brain chemistry is going to be much different than it is at a rested state equilibrium. So you can't just say what you would shout in those other best moments or peaks of conscious translucency. So mnemonics aside, yeah, I don't think that, for example, say your favorite sentence is a paradox, like you realized everything is nothing. That's hard to actually explain because the nouns everything and nothing are hard to categorize both interrogatively and also numerically. But obviously, with that sentence, you're signifying really some redefinition and also reevaluation of whatever idea the word everything refers. So it's like everything is not everything because everything was. Everything has an idea. It could be X, Y, Z. Um, Z for them was blah, 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 but we don't say it. We just say it's nothing. In other words, their everything or their main idea or most valuable thing is worth nothing to me. But I don't say in that sentence, okay, what now? For example, which interrogative category or which um, leaf artifact concept is more important than any of the others. It doesn't say that. So obviously, an inspired sentence can't go far without interpretation. So maybe that's the point of this YouTube channel, interpretation not only of text, but also of our own thoughts. And we don't really care what we interpret or what we write. We don't care if the interpretation of the fiction is itself an inspired work. What we really want to figure out is the recipe to make interpretation repeatable and not just reliant on insights or received knowledge from teachers or classrooms a few decades ago. So, and this, and again, you could say, oh, well, it ties back into AI if you wanted to make a process, or it's just logical thinking with a protocol. And it's, steps 1, 2, 3. You have to, in order to apply for a visa, you have to do this step, that step. It's just order of operations, which is inherent in any law, treaty, or institution. But back to the point. So you can ask, of course, the GPT to generate images. And in this manuscript, Third Testament, anyway, why not say the Third Testament? And which is what it was originally called, just third. But I think Third Testament is by itself clear enough. The in the English language is not much more than a of habit of invocation. But third itself is a sufficient determiner for the testament if you catch the biblical context. And it's a bit unidiomatic, but I think it's sufficiently understandable. Anyway, so we had this dream anyway. The intended topic of the video is simply this dream about Avius, the bird god. And I think there's another video on this channel about this. So this is kind of a follow-up to that one. And so you just check that you've uploaded the document and that the GPT is cogent. So I ask, is there a section about a dream mentioning the man on the floor? Yes, there's a section in Third Testament mentioning dream. And conversation takes place. Someone asks, what is Avius's fantasy? And the man on the floor responds, the city of his birth. There's a Freudian interpretation of that, which you probably see if I'm sharing my screen. And it's a somewhat interesting dream because typically you would do psychoanalysis after the dream in the waking state to delve into it. But for some reason in the dream itself, the dreamer performs the analysis of the question and the answer within the dream itself. It's actually a dream thought rather than something appended or drawn out later on the couch of psychoanalysis. It's kind of synthetic rather than analytic. And so anyway, at the GPT, could you depict this dream somehow? This is getting into the mnemonics. So if you wanted to keep fresh in your mind or more accessible, rather, a prior manuscript, you could ask for pictures of, I guess, key moments or ideas. And this is supposed to, let's expand this. Yep, double click. There's no bird god, though, because that's kind of the problem. What is Avius's fantasy? There's the man on the floor, there's the dreamer, there's some godlike figure over here, and you've probably noticed this as well, but if you ask for text or a caption within the image, it's kind of garbled or distorted, although it has some strange sense. Fantasy, the city of Yosbarte, of your birth. Who knows? The kind of oracle, I suppose. But obviously, you can iterate on this design, excuse me, on this with the assistant. Here's a depiction of the dream scene from the Third Testament. It captures the man lying on the floor in dimly lit room reminiscent of Florence. Ethereal atmosphere, um, symbolic elements reflecting psychoanalysis and self-awareness. So pretty cool. I do like it. I think I gave it the thumbs up. Now, Avius is a bird god, right? Given the Latin root of the name, do we see Avius in the dream as a bird god, or am I hallucinating? And the GPT says, blah, 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 blah. We get into a little back and forth. Anyway, maybe it's excessive, but here's another depiction. Of course, we have a bird god and a scene reminiscent of Florence, the man on the floor. Now, there's no dreamer talking to the man on the floor within the dream, depicted as a person, humanoid. And I think there's one more. And of course, the question is this activity worth our time or effort? Is it even mnemonic? Do we even need mnemonics, or should we just go analytical and clearly understand what we're saying? So that left-hand side of free-flowing English text is tightly linked to a right-hand side of a clear context of words and their values, but also the categories of these words and their relative values, relevances, and so on. And of course, floor, Florence, flower, and the Freudian interpretation of declaration within the dream. This is what's happening here. And of course, birds, Vögeln, German, and the Freudian interpretation of that related to sex. And if you, of course, yeah, and the miracle of DALLE, DALLE, and so on, relatively well known at this point. So it's a kind of, it's obviously a tool that we can use at a minimum to produce, I suppose, engage in a session with the AI that's at least enjoyable to ourselves. Although, solitary enjoyment isn't necessarily productive. It could just be entertainment. And I think that's about it for this one. So let's go back to this one right here. And I guess the question is, rather than write a book, should we produce a video that's based on a session? And this is not a live session. This is already done a few months ago, but should we produce instead of a book, a video based on a live session with AI, but not only with the system prompt telling it to keep open the right-hand side of those tables of values, not only to show relative interrogative values, but also the attempted revaluation of that's even possible to constitute, I guess, what you could call new mind, but should it rather be audio-visual, for example? The GPT could receive the audio that I'm speaking rather than typing. The different speeds that you can do these things, especially while caffeinated. And and have the video composition interspersed with the generation of pictures, either to expand upon what you're saying or to stop you, remind you, and so on, some kind of governance of the flow of text. However, with the governance being more transparent. Oops.